Good day everyone and welcome to another tutorial. In this tutorial we will be covering the new group nodes. So first of all I'm going to take you through them and then I'm going to show you how to add them. So over here we have the 2D to 3D conversion. It consists of basically two methods. We have the parallax method and then we have warping methods. That's why I say it's only two methods. The one is super quick. It's very simple, straightforward. It's the one I usually use whenever you're doing any kind of additional effects over regular 3D. The regular 3D I use the parallax for. It's slower, but it gives a much sharper result. And it also handles wide open spaces fairly well, as opposed to the warping. And then, of course, we have the original warping one, which is a lot more advanced, but it supports quite a bit more features. You can start off with totally in the screen 3D, 3D that crosses over the screen, and of course 3D that's only outside of the screen. You can start with that kind of thing with this node, so it's really, really cool. We also have the conversion nodes that enables color anaglyph to be converted back to 2D, color anaglyph to be converted to different other methods. Of course, the output is going to be grayscale because of your loss of color information, and it's not perfect, but because anaglyph is such a baked method, you're not going to get a perfect result anyway, unless you use something like the whole deep learning neural networks stuff, which I'm not going to get into anyway. Okay, we also have the other conversion nodes that deal with top and bottom, side-by-side interlace, and grayscale anaglyph, as well as interlaced and left and right. Now, left and right is one of my favorite ones. I usually use it in combination with the parallax, which we'll get to later. Basically, all you do is if you have two separate angles saved as like image left and image right or whatever, you can just put them into this input and the node will do the conversion to color anaglyph, optimized or full color. It gives grayscale, it gives interlace, top and bottom, and side by side. Very cool. Okay, we also have the pseudo depth map generator. It is based on color information, so it doesn't work with grayscale images, and it's also not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. So if you use it, it's just to create differentiation between certain color values and stuff, and gives you more of a 3D effect other than just the whole image receding or coming forward. That's all it's for. It's like a bonus. I don't make any kind of claim that it gives you a full-on true depth map based on the image. Like I said, it's pseudo-approximate. Okay, and we also have the parallax adjustment. This one is specifically for side-by-side. All it does is it moves the images away from each other or towards each other, and that creates the location of the overall 3D space. It pushes it backwards or forwards. So, yeah. Okay, then we have the quick effects. We've got analog signal noise, which is like those old signals where if it's not quite there, you get this noisy, snowy kind of picture. That's what that's for. We get progressive defocus, which enables us to do things that the normal defocus node of Blender is not able to do. Do keep in mind when you use this node, do not try to use the depth map to focus things by inverting it or stuff like that. Use the focus point slider to adjust the focus. Otherwise, it really messes with the results. Sometimes it looks interesting if you do that. But if you want the best results for proper scenes with characters and objects and things like that, please use the focus point. Black is your furthest point away from the camera, and white is your closest point from the camera. I do caution that you may need to use a color ramp node to adjust your depth map so that you get the right result. That's just a heads up. Okay, we also have the quick anti-aliasing for images and for text. Now do realize that when I say quick, I'm not talking about quick as in the node is super fast. I'm talking about quick as you don't have to try to build this yourself. It just makes your workflow faster. The quick anti-aliasing for text is faster than the for images, but the for images does give better results even on text, but it does have a little bit of an artifact problem with text. That's why I have one specifically for text. So do realize that those do take a while to process. Okay, we do have quick deinterlace, which doesn't work like you would expect, field 1 or field even field or odd field. It doesn't work like that. It does work field 1 and field 2, because if your resolution changes from HD to typical DVD or something like that, it doesn't necessarily mean the fields are going to be in the same position. So do bear that in mind. You can see that I called it field 1 and field 2. So just remember that. Okay, we also have a quick vignette. That's the same technique that Andrew Price uses. I always give him credit when I mention this one because that's where I learned it. I also have a quick sun glare. This is based on the first video tutorial I made, which showed you guys how to make a sun glare that has a bit of a realistic look to it. I'm not quite satisfied with this node group yet, so do use it with caution. It's not perfect, but I'm trying to improve it. We also have the quick film effect. I made a tutorial about that. Check that in the description. This quick old black and white film. Now, I don't know why the Lord led me to make this one, but it is so cool. I love it. The only thing that it still needs is white spots, along with the black ones. So just follow the instructions on the website. Also, link in the description. Quick blur, you guys have seen this in multiple tutorials. I'm not even going to talk about that one. We also have quick pixelation. This one is integrated. There's also the traditional one. The integrated one enables you to have a pixelated object in a scene that's not pixelated, which is really awesome. So you have a pixelation mask, which is for your object, and then you have a foreground mask, which is just to make sure that the pixelation doesn't cross over things. Now, these masks are harsh. They're not progressive because of the pixelation effect. So do bear that in mind if you use this. The strength has to do with the heaviness of the pixelation. So you can call this like the resolution of the pixelation. You can see that it's on 4.9, which in my opinion is going to be the max that I would suggest you go for. You can go for anything up to 5, if I remember correctly. But like I said, it's not perfect. So also we have the traditional one, which is what you would expect from any newscast or any video where somebody kind of blurs out faces, but instead of blurring, they use pixelation. So this one crosses over edges and whatever. It's very straightforward. Okay, we also have the gimpness nodes. Now, the gimpness nodes is just to adjust your hue, saturation, brightness, and contrast in a way that is much more similar to the way that GIMP and Photoshop would handle it instead of the way that Blender handles it. Blender has a weird way of combining brightness and contrast on the contrast alone, and brightness itself is also kind of more brightness, but it also has an element of contrast to it. I really don't like it. It was kind of this jarring effect when I was expecting something similar to GIMP, and I got this weird mix of stuff. It meant that I couldn't adjust video the way I wanted to. You kind of expect video to respond like pictures. And it's not unreasonable either. So these enable you to get closer to that. It's also based on the work of another guy. I'll put a link in the description to his stuff as well. We also have the video coloring node, which is based on GIMP's color balance nodes. Color balance nodes. It's also based on GIMP's color balance feature, which enables you to adjust things based on shadow, midtones, and highlights. It is the perfect way to color photos. I cannot even begin to describe how cool the results are. I'll put a link in the description to some results. It's just that Blender's masking tools leave a lot to be desired, so it's extremely labor intensive to color a video. And last but certainly not least, we have the for anime section, which is absolutely my favorite, and also, by the way, the section that required the most work. My absolute favorite one is the defocus, which was also the first one the Lord gave me, and I am so grateful for this one. it enables you to establish location through a defocus effect. For example, the most classic one is to have a fence and the building blurred, and then to have the fence be blurred and the building clear, or to have a character clear and then have something on a table clear, or something like that. You know, it enables you to really introduce something in a creative way. I just absolutely love it. It's not perfect. Again, it uses the in-paint node, so you will get, let's say you use the fence example. You can see on screen what it looks like. It does create a slight jittery effect because the in-paint node does not take into consideration what is around the gap. So I put that in as a feature suggestion for Superfast Stereoscopic rendering. I'll put a link in the description to that proposal. I suggested that to generate the second eye, actually to generate both eyes, what it needs to do to properly in-paint is to give priority to higher contrast lines, and to continue lines instead of just extending the last line of pixels based on the angle of the hole. I've only got like 4 upvotes on it. I don't know why. But you guys can go check that out. Give it upvote. Tell people, yes, we need this, even if you just put it in the in-paint node. It's a really useful feature. It's not perfect again, but it will make things like slow reveal and other things like that a lot more stable, and even things like this. So go give that a vote. Also, we have the anime motion lines, which is what you can see on screen right now. It just generates those speed lines that you would expect from an anime character moving like really quickly. Unfortunately, it's not only follow or only lead. I've tried working with that, and because the information is so limited, Blender struggles with it. So I don't encourage using that at all. So this one does do a lead and follow line based on a curve. You'll see that there's also a vector mask for motion lines. This is when you want to isolate a specific object for motion, which is pretty much what you'll be doing all the time if you use this. If you have 2D characters on a 3D background, you often only want your character to be the one moving, and that's where the ID mask comes in. Now, it doesn't have to be an ID mask specifically. You can generate your mask before, for example, let's say you have multiple materials on a character or whatever that you want influenced by the lines. Then you're going to have to add all those masks together and then put it into this slot that says ID mask. The reason I have made this specific group node is, for some reason, at least in the version I use, the mix node diminishes the values that you get in the vector path. I don't know why that happens, but I did find, praise God, that if you split it up first in your RGBA and you mix it there and then you join it back together again, the values are consistent. So that's what this group node is for. You don't necessarily have to use it. If the version that you're using doesn't diminish it, it's not necessary, but it's there for those that do. Then we also have the anime sun glare, which I absolutely love. Again, the Lord showed me how to get a breakup in that rainbow circle that is generated, which is part of the glare. And I get to share that with you guys. And it's also optional. It's not a must. I was led to give you guys that roughness control. So that's really awesome. And we also have a liquefy effect, which just turns an object into a watery-like substance with those foam lines over it. That's also animated, by the way. And it also enables you to choose the color of your water. This one also uses the in-paint node to generate the stuff that would be behind the object. So it also gives you the brightest areas of the object and the darkest areas of the object, which means you get your lines and you get your specularity. So when you use this node, please do consider those aspects so that your material does respond the way that you want it to respond. It's not like purely the black and purely the white. For the darker areas, it also takes some shadows into consideration and things like that, just to give you a much better result. So just play around with it. I'm sure you guys are absolutely going to love it. It does use normal nodes and stuff to also give you more white edges and stuff like that, just to get that watery effect really good. Also has a foam glow effect. That's a post-processing thing. If you don't want it there, just turn it off. The reflections are also based on the in-painting that's distorted. The one distorts more inverted, and the other one distorts like in a relief way. So it's just a bunch of really cool effects that really come together to give you a watery effect. So yeah, that is what you get in this package. It's a combination of roughly 30 nodes at last count. I haven't counted it again. There are actually 34 nodes. Wow. God, it's good. I love that. So how do you add these nodes to a project, you might ask? Generally, I would recommend that you add these to your default project so they're always available. But I know that sometimes I update these like super regularly, and if they're part of your default project, you might not have the latest in your project. So if you want to make sure that you have these in your default project and have the latest ones in your default project, you're going to have to update it fairly regularly. So I'm going to show you just how to add it to a project, and I'll leave it to you to add it to your default project or not. So let's make a new project. Now, as you can see, I have these already added, but there are a few that I do not have in here. For example, the liquefy node. So I'm going to add the liquefy group node to this project. So all you do is you go File and Append. And then you find the file itself. You click on it, and it says Action, Brush, Camera, Image, Node Tree, Object, Scene, Text, Texture, and World. Obviously, we're going for Node Tree, because there's no other node options. And then we have all of our group nodes. Now, the reason this one says don't touch is because it is part of the progressive defocus effect. Now, I say don't touch because if you mess with it, then you'll break the progressive defocus, the 10-layer progressive defocus. So just don't touch it. So let's get that liquefy object, and you can say append from library, or you can just select all of them and append from library. In this case, I have to still update my old project. So I'm just going to add the liquefy object. Okay, now it's appended. But where is it? It's just listed in the group. One thing to remember, when you add group nodes to a project, you have to make sure they have a fake user. If you don't have a fake user, then it's going to be removed once you save it and exit, or if it's not being used. So if you add it, you'll see that there is no fake user and there is no use of the node itself. So you have to just click this little F and delete it. Now, if you save your project and you exit and you come back to it, it will still be there. Simple as that. So this is also how you get rid of the nodes that are old. You have to just add them, or you can go through here, the data blocks in your outliner, and you go to node groups like that, and you can see they're all listed here. So if you want to, you can add the fake user here as well. So you can see there it is, fake user, and it's ticked. So if I want to update all my nodes, all I will do is go through and tick that little box and go next one, tick that little box and go next one, tick that little box. It does take time when you have 32 nodes, but it it's worth it in my opinion. It's something that you don't have to do every day, and it's something that you don't have to do with every project. So that's why I say, depending on how much you use these, it might be better to just add whatever you need for your project. Okay, so getting back to all scenes. So now I want to show you guys a few of these nodes just to give you guys an idea of how they work and how to use them. And the first one we're going to be looking at is the color anaglyph conversion node, just because it's one of the newest ones. This one helps you restore anaglyph to a 2D format that is at least somewhat usable. So I'm going to show you what the result of it is, and then I'm going to show you how it works. So this is a full color anaglyph generated from a side-by-side, if I remember. Yes, generated from side-by-side, and this is what it looks like, mostly fixed. So as you can see, what it does is it pulls the red back. Now, immediately you might assume it just pulled all of the red because the glare is now out of focus, but that is actually not the case. So this is what it would look like on default. Now, the reason it looks like this is because it tries to compensate for the optimized anaglyph, which looks like this. Optimized anaglyph has a much brighter and much more even red channel, which means that there's a lot less retinal rivalry, but your colors are a lot more inaccurate. So what this one does is it takes some of the blue and the green, and it subtracts that from the red channel, giving you a little bit more of a natural look. Now you can decide how much of it you want to subtract. I subtract roughly 0.8 at a default value, but I find that going for like 0.5, 0.6 thereabout gives you a little bit less of a blue dominating kind of feel to it. So if you want to, you can use that, but I'm going to be sticking with the full color anaglyph. And if you use full color anaglyph, it has to be on 0. Just a heads up. Okay. So what this does is it uses 9 segments on the image for you to distort the red channel to fit the cyan. Cyan is the combination of the green and the blue. So obviously this is not for red and blue anaglyph or yellow and blue or that green and magenta, that sort of thing. This is not for that. This is just for red and cyan, which is cool because it's the most common form of anaglyph. At least it used to be. I don't know how dominant the green and magenta is. So anyway, let's start with the top middle, these clouds over here. So let's see, that's row 1 and it's in the middle. Let's move it up. And there we have the clouds. Perfect. So let's take the bottom now. Something like that. Okay, and let's take the absolute center, which is row 2 in the middle. Just want to get this one using this little spot to align it as best I can. Okay. Now remember, these do work together, so don't be surprised if when you adjust one thing and another one gets a little extreme or whatever. I mean, look at that. Okay, I'm going to give it a higher value of about 60 or so. Make it 80 because I want it to get in proper line over there. Okay, that's really good. So let's take the left side of number 3. And there you have it. There you have a basically restored anaglyph image, color anaglyph image. Now, obviously, you're not going to get a perfect result every time because if you have major depth differences or whatever, you are going to run into problems like the glare, for example. But all things considered, I think we actually get a good result. So I'm happy with this. When it comes to restoring it so that you can get a grayscale anaglyph that actually makes sense, What it does is it takes the information that we use to distort the red and distorts the cyan and adds that to the red so that the red has a fuller channel that makes more sense. So that when you look at it in anaglyph, you can actually get a grayscale anaglyph from a color image, which is not as easy as you might think. And let me show you why. So if you convert an anaglyph image, a color anaglyph image, directly to color. Now we're talking about full color anaglyph, not optimized. Full color anaglyph does not have a lot in the red channel, whereas optimized does. So in order to get this kind of brightness information restored, you have to find some way of getting those things back, and that's the advantage of this one. So if you now take the grayscale and you look at the red, you can see that it's a blurred version of the cyan that's been distorted, just to restore that brightness value. So it's not a perfect restoration, but it certainly helps. It's very cool. Okay, so moving on to the next one. Okay, so this is the original first frame of that tree sequence that we just looked at, and this is the depth map. Now obviously I have the sky going back quite a bit, so I did want there to be separation from that background, but in this instance I don't, because it's going to mess with the quality. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of stick that background to the furthest object, so that we also have a fairly high difference between the front and the back objects. That looks really, really cool. Now what we can do is we can get one of the 3D nodes. In this case I'm going to be using the warping one because it's the fastest. Let me just get it, Superfast warping. And this will be my depth map, not my image. And there is the image, that's the left, that's the right, and this is the optimized anaglyph. Now, one thing you'll notice immediately is that it's a pop-out image. I don't want it to be a pop-out image, and I don't want it to be as intense as it is right now. So I only want it to be about 40, and I want it to be indented. So I'm just going to use the parallax feature to push it back into the screen. I think if you use the same value, you should be fairly guaranteed to get it at screen level. Yes, you is. Okay, that looks really cool. So we have a little sun going down there, and as you guys know, I have a glare that's supposed to go over the image that looks like this. Obviously, Blender is not going to generate a depth map for this glare. It's just not. The reason isn't that Blender sucks at it, it's just that it's a compositing effect. It doesn't have depth. So what you need to do is you need to invert it into a grayscale image, and that then becomes your depth map. Now the reason you invert it is because the brightest point has to connect to the light source. If you don't, then it's going to not fit. The issue for me here is that when you look at light, it fills your eyes. So it's like the light is at the source, but it's also like it's right in front of your eyes, and that's the effect the light gives. Unfortunately, that's not something we're going to be achieving with the quick 3D methods, at least not yet. So we're going to be settling for an inversion that still gives us that pop-out effect. So I'm just going to invert it using linear, not ease, so I get the most detail. And I'm going to use the exact same settings for the depth and for the image. Now what's nice here is that you can simply add it over each other because we're already in an anaglyph format. So that's very, very simple. You should also be able to simply add it over the other side by side. For example, let's say your side by side looks like this. You should be able to theoretically just add it over like this. Hold on, just need to get the right stuff here. and connect that. So you should be able to do it directly like this. But just in case, you guys know you can add it individually as well. What's nice about this method is that it already distorts both your left and your right eyes, so it's much easier to work with. So anyway, switching back to the optimized anaglyph, that's what we get. So you can see that the glare has individual depth to it. The reason that you do it separately instead of doing it with the rest of the image is because it doesn't really work with the depth information of the image. It creates really, really bad distortions. And I'm going to show you what I mean. Look at that. Yeah, that sucks. You really don't like that. That's really bad. Ew. There you go. So you see, it's really not difficult to work with 3D in Blender. It's just a matter of choosing the method that's appropriate for your project, and yeah, that's it, rendering it out. So I want to show you guys what the parallax looks like, just so you guys have a comparison. Now, obviously, you can see that the difference in sharpness is absolutely worlds apart from the other one. Now, if you add the glare to this as well, it just makes it pop even more. But just to show you guys, this is what it looks like. It's really, really good. What I usually do to boost the quality, to deal with separations like this over here, is I use 2 at half the settings, and they're inverted from each other. So I'm going to quickly set that up with the glare and show you what it looks like. And there you have it. So it's basically the same. It's much more centered. The tearing is less because it's shared between 2 eyes. So you really do feel a little bit more centered on the image. And of course, we still have the glare going because it's like super quick. And you can see that there's a little floating dot over there from the glare. It's really cool. So as you can see, it's not difficult to work with. And you really do get good results. It's not perfect because this is a conversion method. There's a lot of information missing that has to be compensated for. But I think if you're going for speed, the compromise in additional detail might just be worth it for you. Let's look at the anime sun glare. So getting an anime sun glare over here, that's right there. And of course we do need we obviously need a little sun to go in there, and we need it to go in there. Okay, now we just wait a few seconds. Okay, see, that's what it looks like over there. We do want it to be on a background, just so it looks a little bit nicer. So I'm going to be inputting a texture. Let me just get that. I'm just going to turn this off because it's really annoying. It's a little bit heavy, so yeah. Yeah, I'm going to use one of these don't touch textures. I'm not going to adjust the texture or anything. I'm just going to use it to create a sky-like effect. So I'm going to be using blue. Fairly dark, strong blue. Not too strong. Okay, that's nice. And I want to copy that blue. I want to up its saturation all the way if it's not, and make it a little bit darker, something like that. I really like that. It's beautiful. Okay. That's pretty. So let's add this then over, hold on, there we go. And then we get to add the sun glare over that. And this is what you get. Okay, now for a source, a sun or light source this small, you're not going to get those rings and all those other fancy tools. So what I need to do is just up the brightness. So I'm just going to start at about 5. Okay, 5 is a little weak. Let's go for 20. Yeah, so 20 is a good setting. Okay, just to make sure we get a good angle. And there you have it. So you can get really stunning results. And let me show you what it looks like if you remove the roughness from these rings. Let me just get that. Some of you might prefer it as clean as this. I sometimes do, but sometimes I just really like that kind of itchy, scratchy kind of look to it. It's really pretty. Yeah, just like that. So let's quickly do a quick scene to demonstrate the 10-layer defocus. So I'm going to go into 3D view. Now we just need to make sure our distance is correct because we're going to be using the mist pass. So I'm just going to bring the depth of the camera down so I can see how large our scene is. Okay, it's about 20. So I'm going to set my mist also to be 20. Okay, I think we are good. Just want to delete most of these because they're not necessary. Going to need the mist, not object, material index, no. I think we're good. Yeah, I think we're good. We're not going to be using the shadow or stuff like that either. Okay, so let's quickly get the group and just make sure that everything is indeed here that we need to be here. And let's get a viewer node as well. Okay, one thing I do want to do is I want to make sure that they are overlapping to some extent. So I'm just going to enlarge this little sucker over here. Just going to flatten it out so that it still fits the shot, but that it is visible. Same with this one, it's going to overlap, and I actually want this one and the red one to overlap as well. I want to show you guys the difference between what it should do and what it should not be doing. Okay, I think that's good. So let's see that. That's beautiful. Going into the node editor, and there we go. So obviously it's set to the front, or at its middle, what it defines as the middle. So you are going to change your depth map to make a little bit more sense. Because you see this is like a halfway value, and that's actually the most front object. And that's the most back object. So I just want to bring that forward so we have a higher contrast going. So now you should see this one being the focus. Let's give it a few seconds, just like that. So if you have, look at that, you can see that it fuzzies over the sharper object. So if you were to adjust this a little bit, I want to take it, actually want to sharpen up the depth here because I feel like it's a little bit too, what's the word? Yeah, something like that. Okay. Okay, so let's look at that. Just wanted it to be a little bit stronger. So as you can see, it is progressive. So part of the monkey is in focus and part of it's not. It's just the way it goes. So if you want to set it to the front, you can set it to 10. So now it's going to focus on this one, and everything else is going to be getting progressively more fuzzy. Just like that, you have a nice sharp object over here. And if you take it all the way to the back, it's going to focus on this monkey, and everything else is going to be blurred over it. Let's give it a few seconds. Just like that. So you see, one of the coolest features about this progressive version is that you do have fuzzy objects over it. One thing that is a bit of a shortcoming is that sometimes the layers don't repair as good as they really should be able to. And that's a result of only having 10 layers. The compositor is too slow to build in 20 or 30 or 40 or even 100. So it's unfortunate. But at least it works. The problem is, though, if you're trying to manipulate it with the depth map alone, this is what's going to happen. That is awful. That is just plain awful. So let's say I set it to focus on the most back monkey. Look at what happens with the front one. And this is typically the result I get when I use Blender's own defocus node. When I try to get something in the back to be clear and something on the front to blend over the object, only front objects or close objects get a slight blur over, the rest just don't. So always make sure that you use it as per default, which means black is the furthest and white is the closest to the viewer. So I want to show you guys what the anti-aliasing also looks like, just to add a little bit of a bonus in here. So I'm going to take this one out, as well as that. Now you can see that it's not been anti-aliased. Just want to zoom in over here. You can see that it is quite rough. It kind of looks a little bit DOS-like in a way. So if you add the quick anti-aliasing for images, you can see this. And just zoom in at a proper value. So this is what I was talking about earlier with slight artifacts. It sometimes over detects and it goes a little bit over. But as you can see, it still gives you a very nice result for something that didn't have anti-aliasing at all. Like seriously, it looks really, really nice. So if you look at this original size, just get the image, you'll see a fairly clean result. So let me mute it for a second so you guys can see what it looked like before. That's what it looked like before. So it's not major in terms of this one because it's a fairly busy image, but it does become major when you have animation and things moving. So yeah, I'm going to show you guys a practical example. Okay, so this is an image where I didn't anti-alias it at all. Actually, an image sequence. This is for working with rocks, an anime style rock. It's not perfect, still working on it, but I still really like the result. I mean, look at the original. Look at that. That's absolutely stunning. And it's all procedural. It's really, really cool. So anyway, zooming in again. So look at what happens with the rocks. You see what it does? It just kind of doesn't know what to do with those little spots and dots and everything. And it also doesn't always know how to work around curves with the images. In fact, some parts are actually left out. Look at this. Some parts are actually left out, whereas if you use the for images one, there you go. It's a much, much better result for images. You can also see that it has gotten rid of at least some of the noise in the rocks itself. So you do get a much, much better result like this. Do bear in mind that this is not higher quality or even exactly the same quality as Blender's built-in anti-aliasing. Blender's built-in anti-aliasing is I wouldn't say much higher quality, but definitely obviously higher quality when it comes to really fine details. So if you are going for quality, absolutely use Blender's built-in one. If you're going for speed, like for tutorials or something like that, then this one would be invaluable to get things done faster. So just for the sake of interest, I'm going to take out these two again. I'm going to add the film one. Where is that film one? All black and white film. Just love how this looks. Just check that out. Now obviously you have to use a lower resolution because it's built for the resolution it's working at. So if you are working with a higher resolution, you will technically be having a higher resolution film, which sounds kind of silly, but it's not. It actually does make sense. So I'm just going to set this to the render size. Okay, so if I zoom out like this, and I move it across, you can see that the brightness changes, the focus changes a little bit. You can see little dots coming in and out. You can see on the bright areas, like around the waterfall over here, that there's a constant grain going. There are some spots going over there. So it's a very, very cool effect. I really like it a lot. Just remember that you do have to work at a reduced frame rate as well, because these films didn't run at like 30 frames per second consistently. It ran at roughly between 15 and 17, around there. I think it depended on how fast they cranked the film or something like that. I don't know. I don't know the technology behind it. I just know that this really, really looks cool. You can see that it shifts as well. It's a awesome little node. So yeah. So these are just some of the nodes. I do know these will be a huge blessing to you guys. I'm super thankful the Lord led me to make these and share these. So go make good use of them. Have a great one and God bless you.